Hi, thank you so much for coming out tonight. I love seeing so many familiar faces. My name is Mara Webster. I'm the co-founder and host with In Creative Company. Please join me in giving a huge welcome to the incredibly talented Mikey Madison. I love it. One of the first things that I wanted to talk about is, there's such an incredible and amazing amount of preparation and training and things that you learned from this role, from speaking Russian to pole dancing to the Brooklyn dialect for the character. And I remember hearing you say that you had like a little bit of nervousness in taking on the role at the beginning, just because it seemed like such a huge task and so many different things to learn and skills to adapt into. And I was interested in kind of like how for yourself you broke that down into like granular levels that made it feel like something you really could accomplish and felt manageable for you.
Well, first of all, hi. Thank you so much for being here. I appreciate it. There was so much that I had to learn for this character because she lives such a different life than I do. I recognized from that beginning, really different universes. And so I think it was less scared to take on the character because I was really excited about that. I felt like I was like, oh, finally I get to play a character like this, or I get to, I don't know, she just was so complicated and interesting. But it was more so just the fear that I wouldn't be able to do her justice. And so I think I was like, I'm just gonna take everything piece by piece. There's lots I'm gonna have to do, so there's the physical aspect of the character, the physicality of her being a dancer, and I wanted it to be as impressive as possible. I wanted there to be history behind the way that she moves and dances, and I am not a dancer at all. And so I really had to spend, 5-ish months trying to cultivate those skills within myself. And so, it was really intensive pole training, flexibility, just all of that. I went to clubs and I shadowed dancers, I talked to consultants. I just took everything piece by piece, and I think, then I started to learn Russian, and then I started on the dialect, and then I started my research into sex work, and then just was like, okay, now it's time to dive into the character and really try to understand who she is. And I'm assuming that a lot of people in here are actors themselves, and or most everybody, I don't know. And so, it's all that work that we do to try to understand a character. And so I was like, I think I just need to ask myself as many questions possible about who she is, because it just felt like such a departure for me. And so I'm like, how do I get close to this person? So I'm like, okay, just gonna write down questions on my computer, like what cigarettes does she smoke? When did she lose her virginity? Was she good in school? Like all of those questions. And I think eventually all of those pieces came together. And I think all of the work I did led up to me being on set for the first time in her hair and makeup, and the costume that I chose. And the pieces all just fell together, but I never really felt like I fully had a grasp on everything just until it was all wrapped up in that bow.
There's also the aspect beyond everything that you just described of the emotional preparation for playing this character, because your performance is so nuanced and so many of her emotions sit beneath the surface. And so how did you set about trying to prepare and understand what that might look like in certain scenes, but making sure that you still gave yourself space for discovery?
Yeah, thanks for asking about that, because that was something I thought a lot about, because she's a character who presents this very tough, scrappy side of herself. I think that she is someone who is truly on the inside, very vulnerable, very sensitive, and I think obviously because of all that happens throughout the course of the film, and she's very hurt, she's heartbroken by what's happening, she's devastated by the way she's being treated just because of what she does for a living. And so I wanted there to be this deep vulnerability, but she's covering it up with this like layer of steel, you know? She doesn't want anybody to penetrate it. She isn't gonna let anybody see that part of her crack, but I still wanted it to be able to peek out at times, you know? And so there's a lot of like emotional preparation that you do to get yourself in that kind of raw place, and then kind of like harden yourself on top of it. And it's really in those more private moments where you get to see that come out. You get to see her facade crack a bit. And so I tried to be really specific about when those moments would be.
Yeah. And with the marriage that she ends up in with Evan, and then when he runs away, it almost feels like watching her go through the stages of grief. There's like this massive denial, like, no, we're still married, everything's gonna be great. You know, there's anger, there's acceptance towards the end. And I was interested in how you arced out the way that you felt like she was really believing it, and where you felt like she was gradually shifting and kind of understanding the reality of it more.
Oh, yeah. Well, you know, I think in the beginning, when it all kind of like goes to shit, when her life is disrupted in this sort of violent way, I think at first she sort of in that big fighting sequence, first she's fighting for her life because she doesn't know what's going to happen to her. She doesn't know if these men are going to kill her or what they're going to do. And then I think it's a realization that she's not physically in danger, but her marriage and the life that she feels like she has earned and that is her dream is in danger. So now she's fighting for her marriage. And I think that she's a very intuitive person, you know, and so what I learned through my research into sex work is that these women are very intuitive people. You kind of have to be to take on that line of work. And so I think that deep down she does recognize that it's probably not going to work out. But one of my favorite things about her is how much of a fighter she is. Like, she's not going to go down without fight. I think she has completely fallen in love with that lifestyle and the idea of this new life, and the idea of like going back to the club or like going back home would be so devastating to her and embarrassing. And so she's kind of trying to hold on to this, whatever last shreds of dignity she has left. And so there are stages of that, definitely. But I think that even until when she's signing the divorce papers, there's a moment where Annie looks at Yvonne this one last time, like, and she knows it's over, but she still has this tiny, tiny little iota of hope. And I think after that, it's completely gone. But then I would say, really at the private airport is when she knows it's over, but he gives that final confirmation.
Yeah. And with what you were bringing up, it's such a good point about how intuitive she is and her ability to read people, and it's something that you can see that she kind of takes pride in as well, and we see it come into play even just those early scenes at the club. And I wanted to ask about filming that sequence, because Sean Baker kind of really set that up as like an improv space for you, where he had people having conversations, had a DJ playing, and would have you go up to the different background artists and have conversations with them, and they would have conversations back. And I was so fascinated by just like the improv exercise that created in character for you.
Yeah, that was so fun to shoot, because as an actor, it's like very rare that you get to have that kind of shooting experience. And so, you know, I had done so much research and spent so much time at the club, and that club specifically, like shadowing dancers, just being a fly on the wall. And so I knew that club, and I kind of understood the etiquette of that specific club too. And so, you know, Sean, we did this for a handful of scenes, but I had like a wireless mic. It was a completely live club with, you know, my coworkers, Annie's coworkers everywhere, customers. There was music blasting. Our producer was the DJ, and they had a camera just on a long lens following me around from person to person. So I had an earpiece that Sean would try to talk through, but it was so loud I literally couldn't hear anything he was saying. And so it would just go from one person to the next. If this background artist wasn't talking to anyone, I would walk up to him and see if he was interested. And it was so strange because I don't think anyone could tell if the camera was on them or not, or even if I was the main character that they were following. And so it was very like free energy, very interesting. And we shot, I think on each roll of film was about 10 minutes. We shot 30 minutes straight, just me walking up to people, and giving lap dances. That was all improvised as well. And so it's so fun to have that experience, obviously within a controlled environment. But I was just giving a lap dance from start to finish. I had no idea where the conversation was going to take me, who this person was, walk up to them for the first time. And just to clarify, all of these, the clients in the film were people that either my producer or director knew. And so it's within this safety net, but I'm still meeting them for the first time. They don't really know who I am. They think maybe I'm just this character. And gosh, it was such an interesting exercise. It was really like testing what I had learned within these clubs. And those scenes were really fun.
There's also something so interesting to the physical side of how we see her, not even just in the club, but then in the relationship and in the marriage, because physicality is a form of communication for her and part of how she connects to people. So when you were thinking about choreography or movement for her, how did you think about that in a very specific way?
Yeah, so the physicality, I mean, she's a sex worker, and so like her body is part of her work, and I really wanted it to seem like she's been dancing for at least a couple years, and so I wanted it to be effortless. I wanted it to be like sensual in a way that before training I wasn't at all. I wasn't keyed into that that part of myself, and so I really had to learn all of it. And I went to clubs and I just watched how women were dancing, and I would be like, oh, I love that, I want to emulate that, or oh, I love this like trick she did, I love how she moved from the sofa to whatever. And so I would just gather information in my head, and I trained with a really amazing real dancer in Los Angeles. Her name's Kennedy Schneider, and she was just amazing. I mean, taught me how to give lap dances, pole tricks. Like I was like, I want to go upside down, and she was like, okay, girl, we're gonna get you there. I mean, even like teaching me like how to twerk and just all of these things that are really important parts of being like a modern stripper. And so it was, I really did, I learned many lessons, and I got to a point where I felt like, okay, like I can walk into a club and like I could dance, and I wouldn't be worried about anything. I would just know how to move in that way. And it was really hard work. It really one of the physically hardest things I've ever done, because it's meant to be effortless. And I remember seeing these women dance, and I thought, oh, I could do that, because it's so easy. It's like how a ballerina dances, and then you try it yourself. I'm like, holy shit. That is hard. Yeah.
There's also so much in terms of the body language and the intimacy that she has with Ivan, and even just the moment where you're sitting on his lap and the cleaner's there, or the way that she's kind of cozied up as he's playing video games, and with the intimacy at the beginning, it's all about him, and we see her kind of like smiling and laughing a little bit, and then she has more autonomy and like, actually I want this, and let's do it this way instead. And so how did you want their body language and communication together to really evolve with the relationship?
Okay, I think I understand your question now. Sorry. Yeah, I mean, in the beginning, well, she's hired like this. It's her job. She's been hired to sort of portray this like perfect girlfriend, this girlfriend experience, and so her job is to just make him feel like a king, and so I think it's constantly like touching, constant physical like affection. That's just I think part of what that job entailed, to be with him for that week. And then I think at a certain point, the lines become blurred within the relationship, because I think he's certainly probably the youngest client she's had that is that wealthy. And he's charming, and I think maybe he could possibly be someone who she would date in real life. And so I think that slowly the lines are blurred, but certainly at first it's all about like just servicing him, and like she's not thinking about herself. But then there's a certain point in Vegas where she's like, okay, well maybe I can change this so it can be enjoyable for both of us. and she tells him to, like, oh, what if you slow down and like maybe do it this way? But I think that, Yvonne's physicality is very telling to the character. He's like party hard and everything's for him, and he's this like eternal kid, and so I think that he'll never really change in that way. I hope I answered your question.
No, I love the details with both of those questions, and you brought up such an interesting point before about the way that Sean was working with the camera in the club scene, where he was following your performance, and you kind of really see that throughout the film in a lot of ways, that there's a lot of freedom to the movement of the characters, and he finds you within the scene, and even the dialogue doesn't have to be line delivery from one person, crisp cut, the next person. There's a lot of overlapping, and I was just interested in the freedom that gave you as a performer with the dialogue and with knowing the camera will always find me.
Oh yeah, well, Sean's the kind of director, he's not really like a shot, reverse shot, master shot kind of director. He really prefers to do like a one take, or a shot where it'll like pan from one person's face to the next, and so he likes to just shoot things in more, I don't know, less, I don't want to say classic, but like more dynamic ways maybe. And so we had an incredible DP, Drew Daniels, who is just like really spectacular at what he does. I knew that they would always have me, but also I think it's just about like being alive in every single moment, even if it's someone else's coverage. That's just, I think, what you do as an actor. You want to, at least for me, like I want to be giving the best performance possible, even if you're just looking at the back of my head, because it gives to the other actor, and it gives you something back. And even if you see like a hand movement or something, it's still within the life of what's happening. And so yeah. But I mean, Sean is was very open to improvisation from the beginning, and so that's implicated in a lot of the movie. I think it just depended scene to scene.
And in working with Yura, who plays Igor in the film, what I think is so wonderful about the ending and how that culminates with all of the emotion in that moment and Annie's walls coming down is everything that the two of you built up into that moment. Like every time I watch this film again, I find so many little moments of eye contact, and you can kind of see that quietly her guard is coming down, even if she's still on the off, even if she's still on the defense, because she doesn't know where she's going to go and what's going to happen next. And so how did the two of you make sure that you were building all these little nuanced moments so that by the time you get to that ending, it really works between them?
I mean, it was just there. And gosh, what a wonderful, wonderful actor, and just like a great person in general. He really was just took care of me during filming. He was always there for me, even when we weren't filming. I just always felt his presence in a way. And I mean, Annie is an intuitive person, but I think also because I'm an actor, like you can always feel someone's eyes on you. And so I would feel his eyes on me the entire filming process. And I would look and he would be there. And he's so easy to connect with and so present. And it was just, he's such a wonderful, wonderful gift. And so I think that it was built over time. We tried to film as chronologically as possible. But then also, just as people, our trust and our friendship was built over time. And I think that you can really see that in the film. And eventually when we got to the last scene, there was something there. We had built trust with each other. We were friends. And we'd had the history of him just really taking care of me. He was quite literally gluing me back together, literally with medical glue during filming. And so I just adored him. And really, just a scary scene to shoot emotionally, not actually scary, but it really vulnerable scene, especially playing a character who's so guarded, to then feel like I'm in a place where I can let that out. It's it was just daunting and very, very vulnerable and intimate scene to shoot. And Sean and I had lots of conversations about that last scene. And, you know, there was some dialogue in the last scene at one point, and I was like, you know, we just all decided that it would just be more impactful for there to not be any dialogue, because if Igor is a character who is really the only person who has treated her with any form of human decency the entire time during filming, and, you know, yet they're constantly, like, butting heads. There is some kind of connection there, because I think that they are more similar people than Annie would want to admit. And so in that last scene, they finally are able to connect and have like a real, honest, truthful moment just without any dialogue. And it was just more impactful that way. So I could keep going and talking about that.
I love it because there's so many details with every single scene and moment. And you know, going back to what you were describing about her confidence earlier, it's interesting because she comes across as someone who is naturally very confident, and sometimes it's very real, and sometimes it's a mask for like the softness and the vulnerability, and sometimes the fear underneath. And so I wanted to ask about your experience stepping into her confidence and finding where you felt like it was a genuine feeling and where you felt like it was a necessary guard for her.
Annie is especially like at the club, I think that she's certainly putting on a specific version of herself, you know, but I think you could really say that about everyone, and especially through like the lens of a character, like you are kind of creating a face to meet each face that you meet, you know? Like you don't talk to your mother the same way you talk to, I don't know, like your dentist, I don't know. Do you know what I'm trying to say? And so at the club, she's putting on this sort of hypersexualized, like, you know, every person she's meeting, she's trying to read them in that moment and see, like, what can I offer you? Like, what can you offer me? How can we have a connection? Like, does he want me to be, like, jokey or flirty or, you know, more sexy or whatever? And so I think she's trying to read that. But any kind of confidence, I think she's really taking the charge in most of those situations. Like she is the dominator, she's not being dominated. But personally, I think I just really got to know this character, and so I was able to just easily step into it. But in my normal life, like before doing the movie, like I was not confident in those parts of myself. Like I didn't feel confident in my sexuality as a woman, like none of that. But I think that because of all the research I did, I was able to like have a different understanding and just be able to channel that.
Yeah, and I think it's amazing how much collaboration and autonomy you had with this character, you know, from getting to help shape ideas for her, being like, I feel like she should brawl more, to coming up with the idea of what her nails were going to be, the tinsel, having input on conversations about costume. And I was just interested in kind of moving forward from this project, how you feel like it's changed your relationship with the way you see yourself building characters, and especially with the fact that you have a want to create your own projects in the future as well, and how you feel like this has really shaped you for the future moving forward in so many ways.
Yeah, making this movie changed my life in so many ways, not just because of like everything that's happening right now, but just the experience of making the movie and being welcomed into the creative process in such a big way. I'd never been asked to do something like that before, or to feel like confident enough in my voice as a creative that like what I have to say, someone will listen to. And Sean really listened, and I think I know now that that's important, and that's something that is really important to me going forward. And so it's definitely changed the way that I want to work and how I want to collaborate with somebody. And you know, just the lessons I learned on the film, I think I just really grew as a person and grew like within my confidence. And so yes.
I love that it's just like such a perfect experience in terms of what it's done and kind of like creatively moving forward. So congratulations, it's such an exceptional performance. Thank you for sharing all of this. Thank you so much for coming out tonight.
Thank you all so much for listening. I really appreciate it. Thank you.
Also, I was asked if everyone could just stay in their seats just for one moment so we can get wrapped up. Thank you so much.